What's up guys, welcome to another episode. Today's going to be a little different because we're going to be doing some video game stuff. In particular, what we're going to be doing is, I'm sure the title gives it away, we're going to be turning my old S13 seat into a gaming rig for which I bought a Thrustmaster setup with. So instead of buying a $300 or $400 rig to put all of this on, I'm just going to go out and make my own out of some 2x4s from Home Depot. Hopefully they'll cut it up for me, and hopefully this is going to be cost effective. Either way, the coffee table that I have my Thrustmaster set up on right now moves around a lot, and having a rig to keep everything stable will hopefully help me out with that. So I'm going to try to document as much as I can, going to Home Depot, getting the wood, letting you know how much those materials cost, and what tools I have to set this up. I've been working on some schematics, a little blueprint for this. I can't find them anywhere, but I'll show you guys in a little bit. Actually, here they are. Please forgive my third grade drawing skills, but this is basically going to be our base with all of our reinforcements to keep it all stable. It can be a side profile, front profile at the bottom, and this is what the actual stand for the steering wheel is going to look like. It's going to be really crude and basic, and it's not going to be pretty by any means, but it'll be simple enough to where hopefully anybody else can copy and mock this design up for themselves. So I'm super pumped, ready to get this project started, and gonna take you guys along for the ride, so let's go. Don't you just love the sound of ice cracking? Come on, go! Alright guys, I'm about to walk into Home Depot. Hopefully I'll come out with some 2x4s and some sheets of plywood. Alright, here we go guys. We finally got all of our lumber from Home Depot. It's quite a bit of wood, and it's about what I expected it to cost, so pretty reasonable for everything that I got. I'm using a lot of 2x4. There's many other ways you could go about it. This is just the most simple way in my mind that I could come up with of putting all this together. And we might make it a little more compact than I thought I was going to, because it's actually a little bigger than I thought it'd be. But anyway, here is everything that I got. Like I said, it's quite a bit of wood, and for the plywood and all of this 2x4, which is nearly 500 inches, cost me about, so total so far we've got two 16-foot planks, one 8-foot plank, some 2 and 2.5 inch screws, and some sandpaper to smooth out all the edges. Cost me about $71.44. So it's still pretty reasonable so far. Like I said, there's many other ways you could go about making your own rig. This is what I think is going to be the best setup for me and what I want to do. It's going to be big, it's going to be really bulky, but it should be really sturdy and keep everything in place, and it should be enough space where I can add to it if I ever decide, when I decide to buy the gated shifter for the Thrustmaster. So next order of action is hopefully drilling out all of our holes and assembling it. So let's go. Oh, and by the way, shout out to all the ice out there. I was carrying this big old 55-inch plank inside. You know, it was pretty slick, but I came to a non-icy patch of concrete and I was like, okay, we're home safe. I can take it easy. Come across another patch of ice. I fall on my butt, 55-inch plank goes in the air, pops on my mouth, so bleeding a little bit, but hey, what are you gonna do? We have to take the covers off our Rapid OEM Nissan seat to gain access to the slider rail bolts. Luckily, it's just a few Phillips head screws. So we've managed to take our slider rails off. Consisted of about 4 to 6 12mm bolts. Yeah, I'll go ahead and say it's about 6 bolts. You have to disengage the lever mechanisms and all of that. I found out that you can't take this black bracket off because that's what connects this bottom cushion to this upright cushion. So you got to keep this black rail intact. Luckily, the seat stands that I have managed to work perfectly. The left-hand side brackets are taller than this side's brackets, so this bracket comes farther down. You should probably retain this piece here. I just disconnected all the wiring, so I'll figure out a place to tighten that up at. And it's the same thing over here. Just have these taller brackets mounted up, and put the OEM bolts back in where they go, and it lines up about perfect. It's a little wobbly without the slider rails, but I think, I'm not sure if I said frame rails earlier, I meant slider rails. But even though we don't have the slider rails, and I think once these are bolted in, this seat should be pretty sturdy. Seat's pretty much done. Now we gotta move on to the rig. So this is essentially gonna be the layout of my base, which is gonna support everything. Of course I'll cover this with some plywood so that we have a nice flat surface, but this is gonna be what keeps everything elevated and nice and supported. Nothing too crazy, just a little reinforcement on the inside to keep it from bowing either way. I would put another reinforcement bar right here, but kind of ran out of wood at the store, so I think this will hold. If we need to, we can add some later. It's important to make sure all boards are somewhat flat and level. You don't want a rocky rig. I'll be using 2.5-inch screws for this job. You can get your screws more accurately set if you pre-drill slightly smaller holes into the 2x4. This ensures you're at a mostly perpendicular angle, so some type of drill is recommended. Alright, we've got our base frame all drilled up, using 2 screws to connect each board up. I don't have anything connecting these middle beams because my measurements were a little off, but once we put the flat plywood board on here, it should help with any flex diagonally, if you know what I mean. But that's pretty solid. It's gonna hold our plywood really well and give us really good support. Don't have to worry about breaking through that. Now it'll be on to the steering wheel base. We're back to the second day of the gaming rig build. Last time we left off, we had finished the base. It was really simple. Basically 2 planks going along this way with some reinforcement this way. It kind of bows a little back because my measurements were off. Apparently, when you order a 2x4, it's not actually 2 inches thick. It's like 1.5 inches thick. So that's probably not why my measurements were off. But actually, that probably is a good reason as to why they're off. But it should work. Shouldn't bow a lot after we get our platform nailed in there. So I got 2, what is this? I got 3 things of 2x4, 1/2 inch thick. This is birch, so it's pretty smooth. I don't know much about wood, but it was the smoothest thing I could find without needing a lot of work before I put it in there. I didn't really want to have to worry about getting splinters or anything when I'm sitting in my gaming chair, if I'm sitting in my socks or something. I just want to just get in there and play. Yeah, I may have to sand it down a little bit, but for the most part, this shouldn't have any problems at all. So really pumped about this. Home Depot was able to cut everything for me. I didn't have any hand tools at home where I could cut wood or plywood. So it's supposed to be like 50 cents after the first 6 cuts. Huge shout out to guys over at Home Depot, really hooking it up. So now the next step of the process, without getting any more splinters than I've already gotten so far. Lay that down, beautiful. I did get this cut a little short because I didn't want to have to buy a whole nother plank of wood just to fill in maybe a 7-inch gap at the most. So we're gonna make this work. I don't mind a little gap. I mean, we'll just run some space in the middle, but that lines up pretty well. So far this base is 31 inches by 55 inches. So this thing is pretty huge and oversized as to what you might need. You could get away with using just a simple 2-foot by 4-foot plywood as your base and then building a base around that or support under that so it doesn't cave in. It's time to mock up where we want our seat to be positioned in relation to the pedals. Take your time with this bit, as the seat will be in a fixed position after you decide to bolt it down. Adding sliders so your friends can comfortably play would be nice, but it might add to the cost and complexity of the rig. Alright, so before I finally mount my flat platforms to our base, I want to make sure that my diagonals are both even, which makes our base square, if that makes any sense. It's got a 90-degree angle on all sides. So I've already done that, so I'm going to pick a side that I want as my flat platform. And all I'm going to do to secure this down is use some nails and nail those down. Next, it's time to mount the stands of our platform for our wheel. It's better to measure out where you should drill, but using the pre-cut board will do. Alright, so I've got my 4 posts drilled in. Now the next part to do is to drill in our bracing and platform support. These braces will allow the plywood for the table to be mounted to the stands while minimizing any instability that the force feedback wheel might subject it to. In other words, we'll be able to do some mad virtual skids in confidence. After the braces are mounted in, it's time to position our wheel platform where we want it. Alright guys, we're nearing the end of this. A few more nails. Alright, now we've got the base for our chair mocked up. It's going to be held in by some bolts and nuts onto our L brackets we have on the seat down below. And we're going to go ahead and bolt this in while it's exposed on top. That way we have access to the bolts. It would probably be more ideal to find a way to bolt the seat into the planks through the plywood. The lower platform support should be enough to reinforce this half-inch plywood from bowing or collapsing. So we're going to bolt the seat straight to the plywood with washers on either side and send it. Now the last thing we have to do is mount these pedals up. They have some rubber stoppers on the bottom to keep them from sliding, but bolting them then will give you the most sturdy foundation so that the pedals won't move around on you under aggressive play. So we're gonna bolt them in. So I could measure everything out really precisely and make some marks and measurements as to where I need to make my cuts. But I'm feeling pretty lazy right now and I just want to get this done. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark the bolts with some peanut butter and slowly put the pedals down on the platform, then raise it back up, and that should give me my marks of where to drill my holes at for this pedal assembly. Just getting a little bit. There we go. Got 3 marks there now. So after taking some quick measurements, I realized that I wouldn't be able to drill out these the outer holes, this one or that one, because these 2 support beams will get in the way. But I think we'll be alright because I think even just this middle bolt here holding the pedals to the floor will make this thing sturdy enough to where it's not going to move around a whole bunch, because it does have these rather large rubber tabs on them to keep it in place. So I think we'll be alright. Tastes like birch. Alright, this feels pretty good to me. Might adjust the pedals a little bit, they seem a little far, but let's go ahead and nail this seat in. And just like that, our gaming rig is finally complete. It's the most basic and ugly thing I've probably ever seen, but it works, so we're going with function over form. Steering wheel is nice and rigid, nothing's really going anywhere. I thought I'd need reinforcements on the sides here, but it's doing pretty well. It's holding up nice and stable. Thought the pedals were too far away, but I can get used to those. Yeah, really basic looking. Forgive this exposed area back here. I didn't want to buy another piece of plywood because that was actually the most expensive wood that I bought, just to fill up a couple feet of exposed area. So I might do something with that later. As is, I'm pretty pumped. So this is a couple weeks after the construction of the rig. First off, I want to apologize for all that popping and crackling noise during the video. I had no idea the microphone would pick up that kind of noise. It's because of the router, so I'll keep that in mind next time I'm shooting a video, so thank you for sticking it through. Second off, I thought it'd be pretty insightful to give a more in-depth review on this thing now that I have some experience with it, and kind of show you guys how I kind of get down on this thing. Hope you enjoyed my awful hand and footwork. I will say that I've been absolutely enjoying this rig. After a few weeks of use, this gaming rig is still the biggest and ugliest thing that I've ever seen as far as gaming setups go, but it's so functional. This oversized table is nice because I can put all my pizza rolls up here and slay away in my game in the virtual world because I can't be a boss in real life. I just crash into trees and stuff. All jokes aside, I'm super happy with this thing. It's super sturdy. I haven't had any problems with it coming apart or anything. I have had other people use it. I'm kind of a short guy at around 5'8", and I've had some bigger friends come and use it. One thing I will note, if you do want all your other friends to play on this thing, they'll deeply appreciate having sliders of some sort on your seat. I don't have them because this was more of a budget build and I didn't want to raise the cost of this. I just wanted to get this thing going, but it's something I might look into in the future. Now let's get down into the nitty-gritty of numbers and worthiness of building this on your own. Yes, I could have bought a perfectly functional gaming rig out there for about maybe $70 to up to $300. Those really vary in functionality though, and I really wanted something to bolt my OEM seat. I already had this laying around, so I wanted to use this and make sure it was sturdy with my wheels and pedals. I didn't want my seat to move around independently if my wheels and pedals were on a stand on their own. Let's get into cost because I know that's what you guys really care about. I'll say again that I didn't cut a single piece of wood on this rig. Home Depot made all the cuts for me. They'll make cuts up to about 6 inches, so as long as you have your rig kind of spec'd out, thought out well in your head, you have all the measurements down, come to them with some measurements, they'll cut it up for you. The first 6 cuts will be free, but you may have to pay 50 cents for each cut after that. Well worth it and way better than cutting the tools if you're never going to be working around wood again. The various tools that I had were wrenches, sockets, hammers that I used to put this thing together, along with an electric drill. It's not totally necessary in the construction of this rig, but it did make the job a lot easier. The most expensive pieces of wood on here were definitely the plywood pieces themselves. I think it was around 10 or 20 bucks per board. I can't remember quite specifically. The 2x4 was really cheap. I went with the cheapest 2x4 they had, and it's really sturdy. It's held up so far. I think it was around 500 inches. But altogether, I would say this project cost me about $100 to $120. Included in those costs is the 2.5-inch screws that I used to put this all together, along with the nails to nail the plywood down to the 2x4. For those of you who are less inclined to put something like this together on your own, it might be worth it to you to shell out the extra money to get a fully functional racing rig that's already been engineered to work. But for me, this was really fun. I really enjoyed doing this DIY stuff, and it made me think about what I wanted to do and what I could do in the future with this. It works, it functions perfectly the way that I need it to, so I would say this was an absolute win, and I would highly recommend it if you're into challenging yourself and making things on your own. Leave a like if you guys got anything out of the video. I apologize again for that awful audio you guys had to sit through. I'll keep that in mind next time I'm shooting anything in the house. Let me know if you guys enjoyed that and if you want to see any more video game stuff in the future, and consider subscribing. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.